Hi, I just thought I'd do a follow-up video after my last one, which was on various subjects that were interesting me, occult-wise. And one of the things I touched upon towards the end was the paths on the Tree of Life and the Sephiroth, particularly the sphere of Daath. So I thought I might just put a little bit in here about really the way I see the Kabbalah and how I view it. I think the Kabbalah is a very useful system. I think it's a very useful and fascinating map of consciousness as seen by a particular tradition. And as used by a particular tradition. So I think it's really interesting. I also, though, see it in some ways as a kind of puzzle or as a riddle which is there to be unwrapped. So rather than simply following it as a given, it's there to actually be penetrated in a sense. It's there to be uncovered. It's there to be taken apart and seen, and to see how it actually fits back together again. That's my impression of it anyway. So I think it facilitates a lot of things and it catalyzes things, but it catalyzes you by actually participating in it. And one of the things that always struck me about the Kabbalah, or about the Tree of Life, was that the actual glyph of the Tree of Life, the design of it, looked really very awkward to me. It looks quite clunky, it looks ungainly. It's far from being an elegant design or a natural looking one. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just led me in certain directions. You know, you've got the supernal triangle and you've got the abyss, which is, you know, in a sense uncrossable by the rational mind, certainly. And yet that all is just sort of like fixed onto the rest of the tree by struts which connect different Sephiroth, you know, the paths which are associated with the tarot. And then you've got Malkuth hanging off the end, and it's all just looks rather awkward and clunky to me. So then I thought, well, that's something. But then when you look at how magicians use it, and magicians are obviously using it in an innovative way. The magical Kabbalah is really not the same as the mystical Kabbalah of Judaism and of Judaic mysticism. But if you look at the way magicians have used it, and you can see, for instance, if you look at the old hexagram rituals of the Golden Dawn, where they are invoking planetary energies, they are using the central part of the Tree of Life, the Ruach, as the basis of that. And if you look at that and you try and map it onto the Tree of Life, you kind of find for like about 5 of the points, you know, so the moon fits over Yesod, Mercury on Hod, Venus on Netzach, Jupiter on Chesed, and Mars on Gevurah. But then you've got this other point which sort of protrudes up into the abyss, and which is associated with Saturn. But the design of a hexagram is natural looking. It has a natural pattern to it, and a pattern which you find in flowers. It's got a pattern which is organic in a sense, even though it's geometrical. It has an organic feel to it. It's got something to it there, whereas the tree as a whole does not. So there's something there, you know, and I would look at that. I think, well, how does this all fit then? You know, you've got Saturn in the abyss, in what would be Daath, basically. So the actual hexagram seems to be pointing to something else, something that's implied by Daath. So there was another thing there. When I then looked at that, I thought, well, okay, let's take the hexagram, let's put Saturn in Daath at the topmost point, and let's let the Sun reside at the center. And in fact, you could just dissolve the outer circle of the Sun symbol, and then what you get is a dot at the center of the hexagram. And it starts to look rather familiar in terms of looking like a yantra, or actually looking like a very, very simplified Sri yantra, showing manifestation and realization. And then it's starting to look interesting. So then, when you've got that, what else do you have? Well, you have the supernal triad, which hasn't been included there. Supernal triad is unto itself. It can't be said, and the three parts of the supernal triad can't really be said to be separate, because that puts them in the realm of duality, which is below the abyss. So I look upon the supernal triad of the Kabbalah as being very much like the Hindu characterization of consciousness as Sat, Chit, Ananda, or consciousness, existence, bliss, which are basically a unitary phenomenon. And in a sense, you could put Sat with Kether, Chit or mind or consciousness with Chokmah, and Ananda, bliss, with Bina. And that for me works. You could also associate the three Saturnian planets, as they were known anyway, of Uranus, Neptune and Pluto to those points as well, if you wanted to. But obviously that's going away from the traditional association of Bina with Saturn. Anyway, that gives an interesting scheme. So then what do you do with that? Well, I find the easiest thing to do with that is to place the supernal triad as a triangle, basically around the hexagram. So the hexagram is within the triangle, yeah. And at that point, the only thing you've got left, the only thing that you haven't got there, is Malkuth. So where is Malkuth? Well, you could just draw Malkuth as a circle around the entire figure, yeah, or you could draw it as a restored circle around the central dot of the Sun, or the central dot of the Sri Yantra figure. Either way, you get an interesting figure, one which is organic, one which is just somehow more balanced. It looks like it's more balanced. Now, so some more things I'm thinking of from that is that with Saturn restored to Daath at the topmost point, it shows that Daath is a very, very operative sphere within the accessing and uses of these energies. Yeah, it's the crowning sphere in a sense of the hexagram, and you find a lot of polarities. You find some basic polarities in the hexagram. So, for instance, Venus and Mars face each other across the hexagram. This makes them a polarity in a very understandable way. Jupiter and Mercury form another polarity. Again, this is quite easy to see if you are aware of the kind of mentation which tends to be governed by both, or consciousness which tends to be governed by Jupiter and Mercury. They are in many ways polarized with each other. And then the last polarity is between Saturn and the Moon, or between Daath and Yesod. And I think this is in many ways the most key one for magic, because in Yesod is the astral light, it's the astral plane. This is what we actually act upon and what we actually manipulate and play with and use and dance with, shape, however you want to put it. This is what we actually use to bring about magic, and then what we use to do that is Daath, is Saturn. So this is the most operative one, and as the crown of the hexagram. Another thing here is that if you looked at the old tree, you'd think, well, okay, you're going up to Kether, you go up to Kether, and then it's just union with Godhead and what have you. Well, left-hand pathers don't really do that. That's not their thing. And if you look at Daath as the crown of this system, then in a sense what you get is the gateway to other universes, other multiple realities, and to a spanning of time and space in a masterful way, which also involves a certain kind of realization of being, and realization of being in existence. So it's deification rather than annihilation of the ego and annihilation of separate being in the oneness, which kind of is, well, why come here just to do that, you know? This actually is a matter of deification and cosmic creativity, and that's what comes from Daath. It comes, there's newness, there's innovation, and in a sense also this is where there is transcendence. This is where the transcendence would be. It's not in the negation of separate selfhood, it's in the continuity or communication with what you could call extraterrestrial realities, not meaning necessarily space people, but beyond our plane, so beyond the mundane plane. So it's extra mundane realities and extra mundane entities and beings, which is, you know, part of what we're connected to. So this also comes through Daath, and this is also, I think, implicit in this unwrapping of the tree of life. Yeah. So rather than going for the right hand path, union with Godhead, annihilation of the ego, you're going for deification and communication with multiple realities, mastery of time and space, and the fulfillment and actualization of the self. And that's how I view that. I hope that made some sense, and thanks for watching.